Hi, and welcome to part 2 of Perspectives on Prayer. Today, we're going to focus on preparing for prayer. What is the attitude that we bring to prayer? How do we prepare ourselves? What steps do we take to prepare ourselves, and what steps should we not take to prepare ourselves? So let's begin. Our first selection today is from the Sefer Hisoros HaTfilah. Hisoros HaTfilah means the arousal to prayer. There's great focus amongst the Hasidim and the Kabbalists that we should arouse ourselves, we should get ourselves into the prayer, not necessarily by great physical motions, although that can sometimes be helpful, the great shuckling that we see, right? Great shuckling. But just in our attitude, our approach, and the philosophy that we have about prayer is essential as well. Let me share with you this selection. First, I'll read it to you, and then we'll take a look at it on the screen. A person of spirit may begin to pray in awe and trembling, saying, "Who am I, a poor clod of earth, to stand before the King of Kings in prayer?" It's a reasonable objection. The person speaks only a partial truth, not yet knowing the higher truth, that all things, even the material world, are filled with God's presence. Indeed, such a person cannot speak the words of prayer. Better that he remain silent before the Lord. Thus Scripture says, God is in heaven and you are upon the earth. Do not rush to speak, and let your words be few. As long as you believe that God is only in heaven and does not fill the earth, let your words be few. Only when you come to know that you too contain God's presence, only then can you begin to pray. Let's look at it again on our screen. A person of spirit may begin to pray in awe and trembling, saying, "Who am I, a poor clod of earth, to stand before the King of Kings in prayer?" Now this is true, but at the same time, there's more to it, as we'll see now. The person speaks only a partial truth, not yet knowing the higher truth, that all things, even the material world, are filled with God's presence. Indeed, such a person cannot speak the words of prayer. Better that he remain silent before the Lord. Thus Scripture says, God is in heaven and you are upon the earth. Do not rush to speak, and let your words be few. As long as you believe that God is only in heaven and does not fill the earth, let your words be few. Only when you come to know that you too contain God's presence, only then can you begin to pray. This idea that God is in heaven and we're down here on earth and we're somehow or other disconnected because, after all, God is God and we are who we are. God is available to us everywhere, within ourselves, within the beauty of nature, which is why I'm actually doing this session outdoors. God is present everywhere and in all things, and therefore we can connect to God through all things, including the presence of the divine within ourselves. So while it's true that God is God and we are a clod of earth, at the same time, to treat God as being so ultimately beyond us that we can't connect to God directly, better such a person should not pray, says the Hisoros HaTfilah. We have to recognize that we have divinity within us, that there's divinity available to us through the inspiration of nature. There's divinity within us through our own personal sense of inspiration, and carrying that attitude into prayer makes our prayers worthwhile. Let's take a look at our second selection for today. This is from the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef by Rav Yaakov Yosef Polnoya, who lived in the 18th century and was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. There are times when you must prepare yourself before you can pray. Reciting Psalms or studying Torah before prayer may provide the strength you need, but take care to avoid giving yourself too fully to these preparations, lest they consume all your strength and leave no room for prayer itself. Preparing for prayer is important. Walking into the synagogue and saying, "Okay, I'll just pick up wherever we are," it's not really nearly as good as it could be. But rather, preparing ourselves with Torah study and Psalms can help us get in the right mood. This is actually the reason why we have Psukei de Zimra. these psalms of praise that are the initial section of the prayer service, that's there in order to help inspire us to prayer. What we are warned against here is don't overly exert yourself there, because you're going to need to pace yourself so that we can have concentration later on. The flip side of this, I'm sorry I didn't read it to you on the screen. Let me put it onto the screen and then I'll tell you more. On the screen, there are times when you must prepare yourself before you can pray. Reciting Psalms or studying Torah before prayer may provide the strength you need, but take care also to avoid giving yourself too fully to these preparations, lest they consume all your strength and leave no room for prayer itself. Let me add here, because it's very important, that the Pesukei de Zimra that we have, the introductory sections that we have before we get to the blessings of the Shema, they are there to arouse us to prayer, to prepare us to prayer. Well, if reciting all of them is going to interfere with your prayer, then you shouldn't recite all of them. So for example, if the congregation is ahead of you and you want to be able to pray the most essential parts, which are the blessings of the Shema and the Amidah, you want to be able to pray those with the congregation, you're allowed to skip Pesukei de Zimra, or at least parts of Pesukei de Zimra. The details are not important now. Similarly, for those of us who are a bit more novice at prayer, saying all of the introductory Psalms can leave us without the focus and the energy that we want to have for the most important prayers, the blessings of the Shema and the Amidah, and therefore we need to limit them. The overall point here is that we need preparation. We can't just walk into prayer, but at the same time, that preparation should not drain us from our focus on prayer. We need to remember what the essential is, and that the essential is the direct prayer to God. Let's take a look at our final selection for the day. And it reads as follows. Enter into prayer slowly. Do not exhaust your strength, but proceed step by step. Even if you are not aroused as your prayers begin, give close attention to the words you speak. As you grow in strength, and God helps you to draw near, you can even say the words more quickly and remain in God's presence. Let's look at it on the screen again. Enter into prayer slowly. Do not exhaust your strength, but proceed step by step. Even if you are not aroused as your prayer begins, give close attention to the words you speak. As you grow in strength and God helps you to draw near, you can even say the words more quickly and remain in God's presence. They daven so fast. I can't keep up with them. It's a common complaint and a reasonable complaint. Especially, we sometimes struggle because when we begin to pray, our minds are elsewhere. We're focused elsewhere. Listen, if you can't keep up with the prayers, that's okay. Pray the essential things. If you can't pray it with the congregation, you'll do the best you can. But in general, it's important to keep in mind that how we start prayer is not necessarily how we're going to finish prayer. We might start prayer with a sense of distraction. Stick with it. It might be hard to find the words if we're expressing a personal prayer, an individual prayer that's spontaneous. It might be difficult initially to get the words out. It might take a few minutes. That's okay. Take your time. Build up to it slowly. I know that when I try to pray to God in a spontaneous fashion, I know that it takes a while until the articulation kicks in. So in general in prayer, whether it's prayer in the siddur, prayer with the congregation, or individual prayer, whatever it is, when it comes to praying, give yourself time to get into a rhythm. Don't assume, every time I sit down and I open the prayer book, I just can't make any progress. I open up the prayer book and I'm so distracted, and after 5 minutes I give up. Slow down, slow down. Give yourself time. God will help you draw nearer, and with time and focus and concentration over time, the prayers will come. We have the capacity for prayer. We have the capacity to pray in a beautiful way. We need to prepare ourselves properly. We need to be patient with ourselves. And if we do so, we can achieve very, very high levels in prayer. Each of us is capable of these beautiful things. Thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow in our next selection, our next offering. Thank you.